Marilyn Monroe didn't just have an affair with President John F. Kennedy. She spent the last New Year's Eve of her life waiting by the phone for a man who'd promised to call her at midnight but never did, a broken promise that symbolized everything toxic about their relationship. JFK used Marilyn for excitement and discretion while she waited desperately for validation that would never come, and that final New Year's disappointment in late 1961 foreshadowed the abandonment that would drive her to her death 8 months later. December 31st, 1961. Marilyn Monroe was 35 years old, recently divorced from Arthur Miller, living alone in her Brentwood apartment in Los Angeles, and deeply involved in a secret affair with the most powerful man in the world, President John F. Kennedy, who'd been inaugurated just 11 months earlier. This video reveals what actually happened during Marilyn's final New Year's Eve before her death, why JFK promised to call her at midnight from the Kennedy family compound in Hyannisport, but the call never came, how Marilyn spent the entire night of December 31st, 1961, sitting by her white telephone wearing the dress she'd bought specifically for their planned secret rendezvous that JFK canceled at the last minute, what Peter Lawford, JFK's brother-in-law and the go-between for the affair, told Marilyn when she called him crying at 2 a.m. asking why the president hadn't called, how that broken promise on New Year's Eve 1961 established the pattern that would define their entire relationship for the next 8 months, why Marilyn sang Happy Birthday, Mr. President in May 1962, wearing that famous skin-tight dress as a desperate attempt to reclaim JFK's attention after he'd started distancing himself, and how JFK's final rejection of Marilyn in the summer of 1962, refusing her calls, having Bobby Kennedy tell her to stop contacting the president, drove her into the spiral of depression and drug dependency that killed her on August 5, 19. The white telephone sat on the nightstand. Marilyn stared at it. Brentwood, Los Angeles. December 31st, 13 minutes until midnight, 13 minutes until 1962, 13 minutes until the president was supposed to call. Marilyn had been ready since 9 p.m. Hair perfect, makeup perfect. The new dress, silver elegant, purchased specifically for tonight even though she was spending New Year's Eve alone in her apartment. Because Jack had promised, "I'll call you at midnight, exactly, to be the first person to wish you Happy New Year." That's what he'd said 3 days ago when they'd last spoken, when he'd canceled their planned secret meeting in Palm Springs, when he'd explained he had to spend New Year's with his family. Jackie, the children, his parents, the whole Kennedy clan gathered in Hyannisport for their traditional celebration. "But I'll call you. Midnight your time. I promise." Marilyn believed him. She always believed him. She'd turned down other invitations. Frank Sinatra had invited her to his party in Palm Springs. She'd said no. Dean Martin was hosting something in Beverly Hills. She'd declined. Even her acting coach Lee Strasberg had invited her to a quiet dinner. She'd made an excuse. Because she was waiting for the president to call. Because that phone call mattered more than any party. Because hearing Jack's voice at midnight, knowing he was thinking of her while surrounded by his family, would make her feel special, chosen, loved. The clock on the wall showed it to the 8 minutes. Marilyn poured another glass of champagne. Her third, or fourth. She'd lost count. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. She'd turned on the television earlier, but the noise felt wrong. Fake cheer, manufactured celebration. She'd turned it off. Now just silence. And the clock ticking, and Marilyn watching the white telephone that refused to ring. To 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes. Marilyn picked up the phone, checked the dial tone. It was working. She'd checked 3 times already, but checked again anyway. Dial tone, clear. The phone was fine. Jack could call any time. She set the receiver down gently, adjusted her dress, reapplied lipstick even though no one would see her. Because when Jack called, she wanted to feel beautiful, wanted to sound beautiful. Midnight in Los Angeles meant 3 a.m. in Hyannisport. The Kennedy party would be over. Jack would slip away, find a private phone, call her, just like he'd promised. 11:59 p.m. 1 minute. Marilyn's hands were shaking. She clasped them together, took a breath. Watched the second hand sweep around the clock face. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. 20. 10 seconds until 19. Marilyn stared at the phone, willing it to ring, needing it to ring. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Midnight. The phone didn't ring. Marilyn waited. Maybe his watch was a minute slow. Maybe he was dialing right now. Maybe 12:01 a.m. January 1st, 19. No call. 12:02 a.m. Still nothing. 12:05 a.m. Silence. Marilyn picked up the champagne glass. Her hand was shaking so badly the liquid sloshed over the rim. She drank it anyway. Poured another. He's busy, she told herself. The party ran late. He couldn't get away. He'll call soon. 12:15 a.m. No call. 12:30 a.m. Nothing. At 12:45 a.m., Marilyn started crying, quietly at first. Then harder, mascara running, lipstick smeared. The silver dress suddenly felt ridiculous. Who gets dressed up to sit alone waiting for a phone call that never comes? At 1 a.m., Marilyn accepted the truth. Jack wasn't calling. He'd promised and he'd lied. Or he'd forgotten. Or worse, he simply didn't care enough to follow through. At 1:30 a.m., Marilyn took 2 sleeping pills, then 2 more. She needed to stop thinking, stop hurting, stop waiting for a phone that would never ring. At 2 a.m., desperate and humiliated, Marilyn called Peter Lawford. Peter Lawford answered on the 3rd ring. Groggy. Hello? Peter. It's Marilyn. Silence. Then, Marilyn. It's 2 in the morning. What's wrong? He didn't call. Her voice was small, broken. Jack said he'd call at midnight. He promised, but he didn't. Peter sighed. Long, tired. This wasn't the first time he'd mediated between Marilyn and his brother-in-law. Wouldn't be the last. Marilyn, listen. The president had a long night. The family party. Press photos. He probably couldn't get to a private phone. He promised. I know. But sometimes circumstances. He promised, Peter. He looked me in the eye and promised he'd call at midnight. And he didn't. Do you know how that feels? To sit here waiting like an idiot while he's with his wife and family and I'm just nothing? Peter's voice softened. You're not nothing. Jack cares about you. You know he does. But you also know the situation. He's the president. He has responsibilities. A wife, children, public image. This thing between you two, it has to be careful. Discreet. Discreet. Marilyn laughed bitterly. That's what I am. The discreet mistress. The secret on the side. Happy New Year, Peter. She hung up. Marilyn sat in the dark apartment. The champagne was gone. The sleeping pills were kicking in. The silver dress felt like a costume for a role she was tired of playing. She'd been the other woman before. Married men. Powerful men. Men who promised things they never delivered. But Jack was different. That's what she'd told herself. Jack was the president. Jack was special. Jack made her feel special. Except tonight, she didn't feel special. She felt used. Disposable. Like someone who could be promised midnight and forgotten by 12. The white telephone sat silent on the nightstand. Marilyn stared at it one more time. Then she turned off the light, crawled into bed still wearing the silver dress, closed her eyes. Happy New Year, she thought bitterly. The first day of the last year of her life, though she didn't know that yet. The affair had started months earlier. Spring 1961. Peter Lawford, actor, Kennedy brother-in-law, Hollywood connection had introduced them. A dinner party in Santa Monica, small group, intimate. The president was visiting California, needed to relax away from Washington pressures. Marilyn was invited as entertainment, a beautiful distraction, the famous movie star for the president to meet. Jack was 43. Marilyn was 34. The attraction was immediate. Marilyn later told friends, when Jack looked at me, I felt seen. Not as Marilyn Monroe, the sex symbol, but as me, as a woman, as someone interesting. The feeling didn't last. But in those first moments, it felt real. They started meeting secretly, never at hotels too risky, instead private homes owned by friends. Peter Lawford's beach house, Bing Crosby's Palm Springs estate when Bing was away, places where the president could come and go without press attention. The encounters were brief, a few hours, sometimes less. Jack would arrive, they'd talk, drink, eventually go to bed. Then Jack would leave. Marilyn wanted more. Longer conversations, deeper connection, real relationship. But Jack had a country to run, a wife to maintain appearances with, a carefully constructed public image. Marilyn was recreation, relief, fun, not a partner, not a priority. Marilyn knew this intellectually, but emotionally, she kept hoping for more. By late 1961, the pattern was established. Jack would call when he wanted to see her. Marilyn would rearrange everything to be available. They'd meet, spend a few hours together. Jack would promise to call soon, then disappear for weeks. Marilyn would wait, check the phone constantly, make excuses when friends asked why she seemed distracted. Then Jack would call again, and the cycle would repeat. It was exactly like every other affair Marilyn had been in. Powerful man, beautiful woman, unequal power dynamic. Broken promises, except this time, the man was the President of the United States, which made the rejection feel even more devastating. Because if the most powerful man in the world didn't choose her, who would? December 28, 1961. 3 days before New Year's Eve, Jack called Marilyn from Washington. Brief call, 15 minutes. I can't make it to Palm Springs for New Year's like we planned. Family obligations. You understand? Marilyn understood. She always understood. That was her role. The understanding mistress, but I'll call you at midnight, Jack promised. Exactly midnight your time. To be the first to wish you Happy New Year. I want you to know you're important to me. Those words, you're important to me. Marilyn clung to them, repeated them to herself over the next 3 days, built them up in her mind until they meant more than they actually did. Jack said she was important, so she must be. So he'd definitely call. So midnight would be special. She bought the silver dress, planned the evening alone, told everyone she was busy so she could wait for Jack's call. And then midnight came, and the phone stayed silent. And Marilyn learned again that she wasn't actually important, just convenient, just available, just the mistress who waited while the president celebrated with his real family. January 1962 continued the pattern. Jack called occasionally. Brief conversations, always affectionate but never committed. Always I miss you, but never I love you. Marilyn saw him twice in January, once in early February, both times at Peter Lawford's beach house. Both times for just a few hours. Each time Marilyn hoped it would be different, that Jack would realize she was special, that he'd choose her. Each time, Jack left after a few hours. Back to Washington, back to Jackie, back to being president. And Marilyn was left waiting for the next call. By March 1962, people around Marilyn noticed she was deteriorating. Her acting coach Lee Strasberg saw it. Marilyn was obsessed with pleasing powerful men, with being chosen by them. The president represented the ultimate validation, but it was destroying her. Her therapist, Dr. Greenson, saw it. She was using sleeping pills more frequently, drinking more. The affair with Kennedy was making her anxiety worse, not better. Her friends saw it. Marilyn would light up when the phone rang, hoping it was Jack, then deflate when it wasn't. She was living for those moments of attention from the president. But Marilyn couldn't stop, couldn't walk away, because being wanted, even inconsistently, even painfully, felt better than being alone. April 1962. Marilyn got a call from Peter Lawford. The president's birthday is May 9th. Madison Square Garden fundraiser. We want you to sing Happy Birthday in front of 15,000 people. The president specifically requested you. Marilyn's heart soared. Jack requested her, specifically for his birthday, in public. This was it. This was her chance to show Jack and the world that she mattered to him, that she was more than just a secret. She said yes immediately. What Marilyn didn't know, Jackie Kennedy had been told about the performance, hated the idea, refused to attend the birthday celebration because Marilyn would be there. What Marilyn didn't know, Jack's advisors were worried. Having his mistress sing to him publicly was risky, too obvious, but Jack overruled them. He wanted the thrill, the excitement, the ego boost of having Marilyn Monroe serenade him. What Marilyn didn't know, this performance would be the beginning of the end, not the new beginning she hoped for. May 19th, 1962, Madison Square Garden, New York City. Marilyn arrived late, on purpose, to make an entrance. She wore a dress designed specifically for this moment. Skin-tight, flesh-colored, covered in 2,500 rhinestones. So tight she had to be sewn into it. So sheer it looked like she was naked under stage lights. The dress cost $12,000. Marilyn paid for it herself. Worth it, she thought, to look perfect for Jack. Peter Lawford introduced her. Mr. President, the late Marilyn Monroe. The audience laughed at late. Marilyn was famously always late. Then Marilyn walked on stage. The audience gasped. The dress was stunning, shocking. Marilyn looked like a diamond, like a goddess, like sex incarnate. She approached the microphone, breathed, then sang, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, Mr. President, happy birthday to you." Her voice was breathy, sultry, sexual. She sang it slowly, seductively, like a lover singing to her man in private. Except 15,000 people were watching. The audience went wild, cheering, whistling, applause. Jack grinned, clearly delighted, clearly enjoying the attention, the spectacle, the beautiful woman serenading him. When Marilyn finished, Jack took the microphone, joked, "I can now retire from politics after having had Happy Birthday sung to me in such a sweet, wholesome way." The audience roared with laughter. Everyone got the joke. There was nothing wholesome about how Marilyn sang that song. Backstage after, Marilyn waited, hoping Jack would come to her, thank her personally, acknowledge what she'd just done for him. Jack sent an aide with a message. "The president sends his thanks. It was wonderful. He'll call you soon." That was it. No personal thank you. No private moment. Just a message delivered through staff. Marilyn smiled, said thank you, went back to her hotel alone, and cried. She'd given Jack everything she had on that stage, exposed herself, made herself vulnerable, sung her love for him in front of the world. And he'd sent an aide with a generic thank you. It was New Year's Eve all over again. Marilyn giving, Jack taking, Marilyn waiting, Jack moving on. After Madison Square Garden, Jack started distancing himself. The calls became less frequent. The meetings stopped. When Marilyn tried calling the White House, she was told the president was unavailable. Peter Lawford, caught in the middle, started making excuses. The president is busy. You understand. Affairs of state. You need to be patient. But Marilyn knew the truth. Jack was done with her. The affair had served its purpose, given him excitement, ego boost, sex. Now it was becoming inconvenient. Jackie was angry. The press was asking questions, security concerns, political risks. Easier to end it, easier to cut Marilyn off. June 1962. Marilyn called the White House repeatedly. None of her calls were put through to the president. She called Peter Lawford, begged him to arrange one more meeting. I just need to talk to him. Just once more, please, Peter. Peter said he'd try. He didn't try. Marilyn called Bobby Kennedy, the Attorney General, Jack's brother. She'd met Bobby through Jack, thought maybe Bobby could help. Bobby told her, it's over, Marilyn. You need to accept that. The president can't see you anymore. It's not personal, it's practical. Not personal, that's what Bobby said. As if ending an affair wasn't personal. As if discarding someone you'd been intimate with wasn't personal. July 1962. Marilyn was in crisis. Her last film, Something's Gotta Give, had been shut down after she'd missed too many days due to illness. Actually, depression and anxiety. 20th Century Fox fired her, sued her for $500,000 for breach of contract. Her marriage to Arthur Miller was years over. Joe DiMaggio had been trying to reconnect, but Marilyn was too unstable. And now Jack, the president, the man she thought was different, had abandoned her just like everyone else. Marilyn's drug use escalated. Sleeping pills, painkillers, alcohol, mixing them, needing them just to get through the day. Dr. Greenson, her psychiatrist, was deeply worried, increased their sessions, started having Marilyn stay at his house sometimes so his family could monitor her. But nothing helped, because the real problem wasn't chemical. It was emotional. Marilyn had built her self-worth on being chosen by powerful men, and those men kept rejecting her. August 4th, 1960, Marilyn was at her Brentwood home, alone. She'd spoken to Peter Lawford on the phone earlier. He'd invited her to a dinner party. She declined, said she was tired. Later, Peter would say Marilyn sounded strange, slurred speech, disconnected. He'd offered to come check on her. She'd said no. That night, Marilyn made several phone calls. Friends, her psychiatrist, people who cared about her. Every call had the same theme. I'm so tired. I can't do this anymore. Nobody really cares. One friend later recalled. She mentioned the president. Said something like, he promised he'd always be there, but he left like everyone else. August 5, 1962. Marilyn's housekeeper, Eunice Murray, noticed Marilyn's bedroom light was still on. Unusual. Marilyn usually turned it off. Murray knocked. No answer. The door was locked from inside. Murray called Dr. Greenson. He arrived around 3:40 a.m., broke the bedroom window, climbed through. Marilyn was on the bed, naked, holding the telephone, empty pill bottles on the nightstand, dead. The official cause, probable suicide from barbiturate overdose. Marilyn Monroe was 36 years old. In the immediate aftermath, questions swirled. Why was she holding the telephone? Who had she been trying to call? Were there phone records? Official answer, the records from that night mysteriously disappeared. Had someone called her? Had she tried calling someone in her final moments? The Kennedy connection was never officially confirmed. Peter Lawford refused to discuss it. Bobby Kennedy was in California that weekend, but his whereabouts that specific night were never fully accounted for. Some theories suggested Marilyn had threatened to go public about the affairs with both Jack and Bobby, that she'd become a liability, that her death was more complicated than simple suicide. No definitive proof ever emerged, but the questions never fully went away. What is known for certain, Marilyn's final months were defined by her relationships with the Kennedy brothers, particularly Jack. The affair that began with promise in spring 1961 ended with abandonment in summer 19. The midnight phone call that never came on New Year's Eve 1961 foreshadowed all the promises Jack would break over the next 8 months. The Madison Square Garden performance. Marilyn's desperate bid for acknowledgement became a public humiliation when Jack walked away afterward without a word. The pattern was established from the beginning. Marilyn giving everything, Jack taking what he wanted. Marilyn waiting. Jack disappearing. It was the pattern of her entire life. Powerful men using her, making her feel special, then discarding her when she became inconvenient. And on August 5, 1962, Marilyn died holding a telephone. Maybe trying to call someone who'd promised to always answer. Maybe waiting one more time for a call that would never come. Maybe finally understanding that she'd spent her whole life waiting by telephones for men who were never going to choose her. December 31st, 1961. The white telephone that never rang. May 19, 1962. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Sung to a man who'd send an aide instead of coming himself. August 5, 1962. Found dead holding a telephone receiver. The symbolism was perfect, tragic, complete. Marilyn Monroe, the most desired woman in the world, died alone, desperate for connection, waiting for someone to choose her. The president never called that New Year's Eve. And 8 months later, Marilyn stopped waiting. The white telephone sits in an archive somewhere now. Silent. A museum piece. But for Marilyn, that night of December 31st, 1961, sitting in a silver dress waiting for midnight, watching the clock tick past 12 a.m. with no call, that was the night she should have known, should have walked away, should have stopped waiting, should have chosen herself, but she didn't. She kept waiting, kept hoping, kept believing the next call would come, until there were no more calls to wait for, and no more New Year's Eves to spend alone hoping for promises powerful men would never keep.